About 3 years ago now, I spent a few $1,000s to build my dream toolbox to work on my bikes. This may seem ridiculous to some people, but to me, this has been one of the best decisions I could have made. Having this toolbox has allowed me to save a ridiculous amount of money at bike shops over the last few years. It's helped me grow a ton as a mechanic, and it's helped keep my bikes dialed in on a regular basis. In today's video, we're going to be breaking down my entire toolbox from major items like my Abbey Tools bearing press all the way down to small items like zip ties. So let's get into it. And here we go. Here's the toolbox. It's the Pelican 1510 in the gray color. I didn't just want to go standard black. I wanted it to have a bit of personality. 3 years later, still stoked on the gray. And when you open it up, we first see this Pelican 1519 lid organizer, which has been such a clutch part of the toolbox. It's so great to be able to use the lid to store so many items. We'll dive into that in just a second. Now looking at the foam, this is just some foam I bought on Amazon, came pre-cut to the box, and it's worked pretty well. It's not Kaizen foam where you can like kind of peel layer by layer. I used an electric needle and I kind of had to just go to the depth that I wanted and then peel all the foam out in one go. So a little bit more challenging, and it smelled super toxic when I did it. So I wore a respirator for like 2 days straight, but that's kind of the overview of the box, lid organizer, and the foam. All of these items will be linked down in the description if you're curious to check them out. Additionally, the entire tool list will be down in the description as well. All right, so here we go, diving into some specifics. We're gonna work left to right on the lid organizer first. So upper left section, we've got a 2mm Allen key. I didn't put a 2mm on the top layer when I built it and ended up wanting one. So in the pouch it goes. Then we've got some Fiskars. This is like a mini set of scissors, which has been so great. I honestly just really need to buy a second set of those to have in the garage at all times. Then we've got this Junior truing stand. Attaches to the back end of your bike. Kind of a cool little gadget. I only think I've used it once in a pinch, so honestly it could probably come out of the toolbox, but it's cool, nice to have. Then we've got a whole bunch of different Sharpies. Let's see what we got here. We've got some gold, some silver. We've got some mastic tape, which is always nice to have. This is a really cool product if you've never checked it out before. It's like a sort of rubbery tape, really great for silencing noises on a bike. We've got a multi-tool, black Sharpie, and that's it for the first little bin there. Taking a look now at this bottom left-hand pouch, we've got some sandpaper, 180 grit, and this is such a clutch item in the toolbox. If you're ever at the trailhead and you or one of your friends' bikes, the brakes aren't hitting how you want, it's really nice to have this so you can reset, sand down those brake pads, rebed them in. It's never fun riding a bike where your brakes aren't working as you want, so sandpaper is a very clutch item to have, in my opinion. Got some shift cable, another clutch one. Then we've got a little park tool, internal routing kit here, which thankfully doesn't have to get used too often. You know, the internal routing these days is pretty good, but nice to have. Got some more sandpaper. Got a box cutter, always good to have, and some Q-tips. Q-tips are really clutch in my opinion, especially when you're doing new brake pads, because you really want to clean off those brake pistons before you push them back in to reset it. And when you toss some 99% alcohol in one of these, you're able to get those pistons nice and clean. So a good little item to have. Looking at this pouch now, this is where I mostly keep chain lube and a few other little things. We got some blue Loctite, got some Muck Off dry lube. Then we have some Dumond Tech blue lube. This stuff's pretty ballin', and it smells really good. Maybe that's an unpopular opinion, but I could have an air freshener of this stuff. And then here we have some Free Hub oil. This doesn't get used too often, but nice to have if you're ever in a pinch. Taking a look now at by far the most chaotic pouch. Starting things off with some headset spacers. So huge mixed bag here, some carbon, some metal. It's just accumulated throughout the years and who knows what's in there. And then we've got some barb and olive, so good if you're ever cutting a brake line to shorten it up. And then we've got here some washers. So I just picked these up at Ace. Sometimes when you're running a direct mount 200 mil fork and you run Shimano 203 rotors, you just need a little extra lift. So these thin little washers will make it so that your disc does not hit the brake. So good to have. Then we have some of the disc brake pad spacers, good if you're traveling. And then we have some crimps. I love personalizing my bike, so having these in all the colors is a treat and always good to have on deck in the toolbox. And now, last but not least, the furthest right pouch. All sorts of good stuff in here. And we're going to start off with some batteries. These are so key to have. For one, your digital pressure gauge. If you're like me, you can't ride unless you know exactly your tire pressure with the digital gauge, and if this thing dies, you're going to be so bummed. So having the battery on deck, and then also with your shock pump and the torque wrench, which we'll see later. So batteries are key. Now we have all sorts of volume spacers, 36 mil, 38 mil, 40 mil. So for all the forks from the Z1 to the Super Z and the Bomber 58 here. So I run all Marzo products, so that's what those spacers are for. We even got some rear shock volume spacers for the Bomber Air. And then what else we got in here? Next up, zip ties, always key to have whenever you have a loose cable or something. You never know when a zip tie is going to save the day. And then we have some electrical shrink wrap pre-cut into little portions. This is really good to save a cable rattle on your bike. And to be completely honest with you, I pre-cut a bunch of these before leaving for the summer because I'd built up some new bikes and didn't know if I was going to need to fix a rattle. But thinking about it now, I don't even have a lighter or a heat source to have been able to shrink this. So I don't know what I was thinking. I also ended up having a spare UDH in here that was just sitting at the bottom of the pouch. So good thing to have as well. But that rounds out the entire lid organizer. So now let's take a look at this top layer of tools. Getting into the meat and potatoes now, we're gonna again work left to right. So let's start off with these Allen keys here. So we have an 8 mil all the way down to 2.5. As mentioned earlier, the 2 mil lives up there. It's really not too big of an issue not having the 2 mil here. It's the type of thing that I only use when I'm setting up a derailleur. So not that big of a regret. And on the Torx section, we have just a T25 for rotors and other miscellaneous things. One interesting note on these Allen keys is when I first built the toolbox, I started out with these Powerbuilt Allen keys, and they've been pretty solid. I think it was 80 bucks for the set, which is the reason I went for those as opposed to the Park Tool ones. But over time, they're kind of starting to wear out. So my 4 mil wore out in the Powerbuilt tool, so I actually replaced it with just a one-off Park Tool Allen key, and honestly, I paid full price for this thing. It was pretty expensive, and I don't have enough good things to say about this wrench. This 4 mil brings me so much joy in my life, and I also had to replace the T25 for Powerbuilt, and I also got a Park Tool one, and it's the same story. This tool is so nice. They have a good weight to them. They just fit bolts really, really well. Paid full price, like I said before. This is not an endorsement by them at all, but I don't have enough good things to say about these wrenches. I'd really recommend them. Taking a look up top now, we have my digital pressure gauge from Topeak. I use this thing every single time I ride, and it's been solid. It does Presta and Schrader, which is actually nice. You can check your truck tires if you're into that kind of a thing. So pretty solid product. Then we have a spoke wrench. Really like that one. It's got all the different sizes on it and things like that. Got a valve core remover. We have this Bursman disc brake setup tool thing. I've never used this. This was a waste of money. Then we have this wolf tooth. This is a quick link tool, but it's really sick. It also doubles as a metal tire lever, and it has a spot for extra quick link. So this is really dope. I really, really like this, and I've actually received quite a few comments from you guys asking about this tool, and the brand is Wolf Tooth. Once again, paid full price for this thing. I think I've probably had it for 7 years now. It was in my first toolbox before this one. And then here we have shock pump. This is a new one I just picked up and kind of testing it. It has the two-way release valve, so you can get all sorts of tweaky with your suspension, not losing air. So that's kind of a new thing. I'm not sure how I feel about it quite yet. We got some cutters for the zip ties and things like that. Got screwdrivers, Phillips flathead, of course. And then under the Phillips, we have a little pick, which is good when you need to release a Shimano brake lever clamp. I didn't put a pick on the top level. I always regretted it. And then I figured I could toss one right there. So that's been nice. And then we've got some tire levers and a tape measure. And there we have it, the full top layer of the toolbox, all in all, I'm really stoked with how this is laid out. It's been a good workflow aside from the Bursman disc brake setup thing, which probably has never been taken out until this toolbox breakdown. But really, other than that, it's been great. I had to figure out where to fit in that little pick, but you know, worked out some small kinks, and it's been really solid. The 2.5 Allen key does poke through if you're lazy and just like kind of push on the top down. It's just sharp enough where it cuts through the foam. So in case you're looking to build a toolbox, I'd recommend maybe tossing a bit of hard plastic or something in there where your 2 or 2.5 is. So little things like that kind of show their flaws over time, but for the most part, really stoked on it. And I guess one last thing, which I didn't mention earlier, this is for your Shimano cranks. Works really well for tightening down the Saint cranks, which I run on a lot of my bikes. And it's got a little pick there when you have to undo the little latch to take the crank off. So I guess that's one tool I missed earlier, but all in all, that's the top layer. And let's take a look at layer 2 now. Diving into layer 2 here, starting things off with the torque wrench. This is a Topeak product, 3/8 drive. And we've got a bunch of the attachments for that there. Got some Knipex pliers here. I really enjoy these. They work so well. And then we got another set, Knipex pliers here. Needle nose, also work great. And then we have, this is instead of a chain whip, these are like cassette pliers type vibe. And they work really solid as well. This is from Feedback Tools. And then we've got a disc truing tool here. Always good to have. Got Park Tool chain tool. Then we have a variety of bottom bracket tools. This is the top socket when you're doing volume spacers on a Fox or Marza fork. And we have a second set of Allen keys. To elaborate a bit on the second set of Allen keys real quick, when I was building out my toolbox, I did a ton of research into all the different World Cup Mechanics toolboxes, and for the most part, they all had 2 sets of Allen keys. And to be honest with you, I didn't really understand why, but I just followed suit and put 2 sets in this toolbox. Now, after wrenching for about 3 years, I totally understand why. There have been a few instances, just depending on whatever bike I'm wrenching on, where you need 2 of the same size wrench, whether it be for shock hardware or things like this. So having the second set is really clutch, and if you're looking to build a toolbox, I'd really recommend that you have 2 sets of Allen keys as well. Dropping in to layer 3 of 4 here, we're starting to really get into the depths of the toolbox. But before we start on this layer, if you're enjoying this video, please consider giving it a like. It really helps me out. And please consider subscribing for some uploads where we're going to be building bikes with these tools instead of just talking about them. So for layer 3 here, we're going to start things off with this Bursman. Let's see if we can get it out. Oh, there we go. This is a Bursman headset, cup remover, and BB removal tool. And it's adjustable, which is super cool. So as you tension the bolt up top, it kind of slides that little washer thingy up into there, spreads those 4 fingers, and allows you to hit out different sizes of things. So works pretty well. It wouldn't be my #1 choice if I wasn't working in like a mobile toolbox, but it does the trick. Got a crown race puller there, got some cable cutters. Here on one side, this is a feedback tool. It's got a BB tool, and then this is for your cassette. Then we have the Abbey Tools hanger straightener, which is a very baller piece of equipment. 8mm wrench, 15mm wrench, great for brakes, great for fork seals. Then we have a hammer from Park Tool. We have another pick. This one has got a 90-degree bend on it, which works really well. Here we have your DU bushing tool from Abbey Tools as well. And we got a digital caliper. Last but not least, we're down to the 4th and final layer. We actually got some taller foam down here, which makes it a great place to put some of the bigger tools. So let's take a look at what we got. So we have a grease gun, which I used to use a bunch, but I've kind of stopped using it lately. Then we have a rigid deburring tool. Then we have a crown race setter. And what I've done with the crown race setter here is this is actually just the extension tube. And then this is the actual part that goes on your crown race. So when I'm on the road and in a pinch, what I can do is I can toss the extension tube on this, and I can kind of hit the sides of this with a hammer to set a crown race, which that's not what you're supposed to do. The way you're supposed to do it is to use this big long tube which goes over your entire steer tube. Obviously, this won't fit in a toolbox. Actually, maybe it would, but it would take up a ton of space. So what I've done is I just use the extension tube and it does the trick. Then we have a star nut setter, really enjoy using that. Small little bleed kit. We have a pipe cutter, which I've had for a very long time, and to be honest, I think it's at the end of its life, which is kind of sad to say. And then we have probably my favorite tool in the toolbox, or one of my favorites. This is the Abbey Tools modular bearing press. Get this out of here. This thing is so sick. I really, really enjoy this. And funny enough, this is a very expensive tool, and as soon as I got it, I ended up having to take a hacksaw to it, and that's because the way I designed the entire box was with the bearing press fitting this way, and it was about 3/4 of an inch too long. So I just hacked off 3/4 of an inch of the metal rod, and now it fits. And now for the last tool, we have this Park tool, brake tool, I guess. It does a variety of things. So on this end, you can set your barb on a Shimano brake, and on the other end, it's a brake hose cutter. So does the trick for a full brake setup, which is great. And that is layer 4 in the final layer of the toolbox. So there we have it, an in-depth look at my entire toolbox. If you have any questions about my setup, please drop a comment below. And if you think there's anything I'm missing in the toolbox, please drop a comment below as well. I'd love to hear it. Thank you so much for watching this video, and we'll catch you next week. Peace.